Hello again. It's Richard Askam here from Print Island, up in the Lighthouse, at the top of the island, the best view of the entire industry, the 360-degree view of the world from where we're standing. And I've made a bit of room today because I've got two guests. And so I've had to move some of the stuff out of the way. I'm so sorry for that, but it's what we have to do. And I've made room for my co-founding partner, Mr. Christopher Minn, who is on my right, but he might be on your left. Anyway, I'll point that way. He's that way. And then we're joined today by a new guest, but we've just been talking before we came on. He's not really a new guest because we've already spoken, but we've never met. So Jonathan, or Johnny, depending on how well you know him, welcome to Print Island.
Hi. Yeah, it's good to be on here.
Thanks for coming. Well, we thought we'd have a bit of fun today and play a bit of journalistic tennis because Johnny obviously works for let's call it the print media, which has got a vast array of.
SignLink, if you can't see that behind.
I saw that. Yeah, no, I could see that. It's enormous. That's why I can see it. So which is good. But so well played. And Chris, of course, most of you will know from his work, not previous life as well, but digital link marketing, and a print industry veteran. I'm going to call you, Chris.
Thanks, mate.
There we go. That's how I thought I'd style this out there straight from the get-go. So, but welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us up here in my lighthouse. So, I don't know where the best place to start. I think I'm going to go first. I'm going to serve first if this is journalistic tennis, and I'm going to serve to you, Johnny, and tell me a little bit about what you do. Print, monthly, SignLink. I'm trying to read what's behind you now. You tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I am just recently been appointed as the commissioning editor for Print Monthly and SignLink. Day-to-day work, half of it is writing, news about the industry. Print Monthly is more commercial print based, and SignLink is more based on wide format. But it's just covering the entire UK, Europe, and worldwide industry, talking about everything that's happening, all the new acquisitions, the new machines, whatever it is, events. So that's one part of what I do. So there are the daily news articles, there are the features in our bi-monthly magazines, but also a big part of my job is filming and editing videos, video content, some of that going to exhibitions, some of that going to factories and the workplaces of the people within the industry. And that's where we've really been pushing the last year. My background is in film and TV, so we've been really trying to push what that top standard is for video content, because you guys are doing a great job at it as well, but it's really about media, visual media. It's really important within this online world that we are pushing that and trying to be at the forefront of that and trying to modernize to the latest standards. So that's the summary basically of what I do.
There we go. Thank you very much, Chris. It's your hit.
I think, Johnny, it was great to meet you in Orlando.
Yeah.
I think professionally and non-professionally, we won't talk about the cocktails by the pool.
No chat of pina coladas.
No, they were strong, weren't they? Anyway, I was really blown away by your approach to the way that you're reporting on the media. I find it really refreshing, and part of the work we do with some of the charitable organisations like Sheep for Brains is the next generation coming through. I feel you're bringing that right vibe. You surprised me. You got my attention, should we say, when you were dealing with the questions for the AI. Do you remember that during the event? What was your perception of that? I mean, somebody gets up on stage and they start sharing this information on AI in the print industry, and I just felt as if you engaged straight away, but also probably positively challenging it, or were you more trying to dig a bit deeper?
Yeah, I think so. For context, we were at the media day for the Printing United Expo, and they were talking about the well put together research about AI, its adoption, and its use, and how people are finding it within the industry. And I saw, as is often the case, to be honest, a very kind of American-centric approach. Now, a lot of those findings will also be relevant for the wider market, for the European market, that kind of thing. But I thought it was worth noting that particularly when it comes to software and it comes to AI, Europe sometimes lags behind. And I had a chat with Pat McGrew afterwards, who many will know, about the fact that within the UK, you've got a lot of people that are actually having to use VPNs and having to use other means to get the most up-to-date AI technology. And I kind of wanted to just, highlight that, ask about, is there a difference between the UK, Europe, North American markets, and just try and speak about that, because obviously the goal is for the whole industry to catch up and be at the forefront. So, yeah.
And interestingly as well, there was a gap, wasn't there? I think it was reported something along the lines of, and I just bring the stats up here real quick. It was 85% of US print providers now use AI as an essential to staying competitive. And what's striking is the optimism of 83% believe AI will open new business opportunities, from marketing personalization to workflow automation. I found that, and I think one of the things we were highlighting was highlighted to us during that session is how far the UK is behind the US. And again, Richard, this is why we've got Johnny here. He was jumping on a very refreshing angle of reporting that. So,
thank you. And it is true. I mean, sorry. Go ahead, Richard.
No, go for it.
Well, I just wanted to point out that the speed at which AI is being adopted is like we've never seen this kind of adoption of such a drastically different technology, and we are, there is the chance that we could be left behind because this adoption is happening so quickly. So I think it's important to point out.
I was just going to say to you both, actually, that what's quite interesting in this, the latest sort of let's call it battleground of technology in our lifetimes, that the US, that you both feel that the US is ahead of the UK and Europe in adopting AI, whereas in actual in another
Richard,
case,
everything.
Well,
I had to jump in there. Software,
say, Chris, that because traditionally they've been slightly behind the curve on e-commerce, and so that and I don't know, that might be the nature of the country and the size of the country and so on and so forth. But it's quite interesting that they've leapt now ahead. If this, and I don't think it is a race, but I do think that any new tool that comes along, AI being the latest. Prior to that was the internet. Prior to that was electricity. Every pivot point that's come along through the ages. There will always be the early stage adopters, we know that. And then there'll be the sit back and wait and see how everybody gets on with it people, we know that too. I think the print industry, and this is one for you, Johnny, I think the print industry, as I see it, is very keen to adopt new tools, but not necessarily as good at communicating how they're using it. Would you say that's fair?
I would totally agree. In fact, I'm seeing a big disconnect between the manufacturers and those that are actually putting out new technologies, who are very, very much wanting to push AI technology and wanting to utilize it, and then the actual boots on the ground. Your average commercial printer not really understanding or not utilizing or lagging behind in terms of adopting that technology. And there is a disconnect. There's a small number of people who are understanding and starting to adopt it, and there are many skeptics within the industry still, probably a majority, unfortunately, still who are waiting to see. And now I understand there are massive questions to be asked about AI and what it means and the moral side and all of that, but I think it's important that those who are putting out the technology can properly communicate that to the rest of the industry.
Yeah, it's interesting, Chris. I mean, you come from the world of software and web to print automation, and because you're an industry veteran, as we've established, is that AI isn't new. It's been around really since its inception in the 1950s. It's just become. Obviously, generative AI has changed the world as far as content creators are concerned, but as far as the industry is concerned, is this a tool that's been available to them for decades, but nobody's really picked up on it until it became cool?
Yeah, funny you say that, Rich. And that's one of the things that we've been discussing a lot of the webinars and podcasts for the last couple of months with the likes of InFocus and Print IQ. I think probably most MISs have got some kind of AI under the hood, but they've been using artificial intelligence for like 20 odd years. It's just we've all become aware of it because of the trend through the chat GPTs, the Claudes, creating silly images of cats doing plumbing or whatever. I don't know what the latest one is. My kids love it, but I think one of the biggest messages that we've heard, and especially in the last 3 to 6 months, is that we're very advanced as an industry. We just don't actually know it or sing our own praises of how advanced we are, what we can do with data. And that's something obviously we've covered on here on the Matrix, the software Matrix, where I think it was Coco on recently saying AI is only as good as the data that it's got access to. And so I think we're pretty ahead of the curve in most industries. And I want to go back to the phrase that you coined, Richard, some years ago, the tech industry, but we don't actually realize we are the tech industry. Mm-hmm. And that was why Johnny stood out to me, because he was asking the right questions in the media day at Printing United. And I think as an industry, we are evolving to become more sort of tech savvy. But I think as we lift the hood, we've got a lot of the good stuff already in place. We just don't even realize it.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, I'm entering the industry, quite fresh. And I come from film and TV, which is all about, technical specs and, all that kind of nerdy techie stuff. And I'm seeing print being at such a forefront. I was immediately excited and wanting to find out more, because it's easy to forget that the concept, for example, of a printer that can be printing out, custom one-of-a-kind print of one images, at a speed that is faster than you can even think. I mean, that is astounding technology. That is actually ridiculous. And then for that to be at a really pristine, high quality as well, professional quality, again, it's astounding. So I guess a lot of the images, people getting all mucky and in these big dirty print shops and all of that, but like the actual technology behind it is astoundingly high. And I think that should be the messaging.
John, I think that's fantastic. Honestly, sorry, I just cut half your name off there, calling you John, but we're now friends, so I'm going to call you John. We drink pina coladas.
Jonathan, Johnny, together. We'll be calling him Jay next before we know it. Yeah.
I was just going to say, one of the sessions that I was talking about, we spoke to, I think it was in Focus, came on the Matrix, and they actually said that there is a PSP who runs his whole operation in France without touching a single job and has automated the whole thing. Right. And obviously he's invested in the software, he's invested in software that was predominantly already there in Focus Switch, for example, and then used professional services around it. But the point is, one guy, whole operation automated, can be done.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to me to listen to this, because Johnny, you are an example, in fact possibly an exemplar, the poster boy, if you like, of what it is that the industry needs to do to encourage people of your age and generation into that very industry. And they seem to be lacking in the understanding of how that can be done. And yet you're here saying to me today, you saw this, it was amazing, and you wanted more. So where is the trick, do you think, that's being missed? Because I'm always searching for a different way to view the same thing. We were talking yesterday, Chris, weren't we, with on another episode of the Lighthouse about the print industry is missing PR, and yet PR is in print.
Yeah.
So we're somewhere we are. There's a missing link here, isn't there? And from I wrote this article recently for a client in Canada called "How Can We Teach New Dogs Old Tricks?" And it's bringing, yes, the muck on your fingers and the ink and the paper and all that. That's brilliant, but that's not interesting to you and to your generation. How can we, as an industry, highlight to you as a generation that actually it's way sexier than the word print even describes?
I think maybe for some this might be counterintuitive, but I think you actually have to start at a personable level. Yes, eventually you want to talk about the fact that there's all this brand new technology and there's all this exciting stuff, but that devoid of actual personality and real people just becomes kind of dry and basically PR speak, and I think it's really important that at the end of the day, especially in a social media world, people want to hear about people. People want to hear about stories. They want to hear about the highs and lows. They want to have a personal or interpersonal connection with the people that are at the tops of this company. And that will always be hampered when you have large corporations with, lots and lots of checks and balances that have to be done to make sure that, everything is said in the right way. And it is an unfortunate thing, but I think if companies can understand that they need to be personable, that they need to be approachable, that can go a massive way. I mean, you see, people now that are absolutely destroying, giant mega corporations in their bedrooms. And the reason that that's happening is because they actually have an understanding of how to put forward their personality and how to connect with people. And I think that's the core, regardless of industry, to be honest.
And that's the strategy, Richard, that we're sharing. Sorry, Richard, I was going to say that's the strategy that we're asking CEOs to adopt now, because there's so much fake AI content going out there that to be authentic and be real people is going to be the only way you're going to survive or be seen, because there's so much unreal content.
Yeah. Well, and that's it's the scene bit for me that is the missing link here, because and Chris, you're bored to death with listening to me say this, but I think that missing link between what the industry is capable of and what the next generation wants to understand about it needs to be seen. And there's a huge piece here for me that there's a show and tell event that needs to happen. Not just a trade show where you see how something's made, but you can see what's capable of being made. And we were talking earlier on about the rules of economics have changed, Johnny, in that it used to be, and it has been forever, supply and demand. It's now changed the other way around. It's demand and supply. And the advent of the iPhone and other brands are available in the last 20 years has and then you add in generative AI, it's created a world of content creators, but it's also created a world of creative designers and product manufacturers and product designers, and they are all sitting wherever they sit in their bedrooms, as you rightly say, inventing stuff. And the old manufacturing industry, if you like, has either got to keep pace with that or get out the way. And I just wonder whether there's a gap in the market here, but not another trade show, but actually a consumer. So what is it, Chris? B to B to C, C to B to D, H to H, D to all of those acronyms. But let's let people see what the print industry can make. Do you think that's a fair point?
Yeah, I think I was actually going to mention that whole concept, because I write for a B2B magazine, right? But I try and write in a way that if anyone were to see it, they would find some interest. And I think that has to be the focus, to move away from just, this is businesses talking to other businesses, or this is businesses talking to clients. If we can't get people who are outside of the industry currently excited enough to join in, we're doomed. That's the long and short of it, because the industry will just dwindle. So we need to find ways to get basically the most passionate people about the industry, give them a platform, and then make it something that is going to be of interest to more than just others within the industry. People love, for example, seeing how things are made. A lot of people wouldn't realize it, but on TikTok there are shorts and videos of signage being made, of prints being created, that are getting millions upon millions of views. But the problem is that that's not then translating to this idea of this is print, And I think that's the missing link. We're not far off it. People love satisfying craft. They love seeing how things are made. They love, hearing from people who are really passionate about what they do. And we just have to package that together and get it out in a way that says, hey, you could be part of this.
And that's the missing link,
told you it's
isn't it, Chris?
No, Richard.
Say again?
Yeah, I was just saying, I told you he was refreshing, didn't I?
And I should apologise as well, by the way. We have a slight time delay on today's call, so if we're talking over each other a little bit, then I can only apologise. But Chris lives on the moon, so we've got no chance of getting him in the same time zone. But But
Feels like the move.
listen, that's the end of the first set of this tennis game. I think Chris, you and I just edged it slightly. I'm going to say sort of 6-5 maybe on in the tie break. But we're going to hand now over for the second set to Johnny, as the trained young journalist that he is, to really ask us what you'd like to know from us, Johnny, in the next 10 minutes or so.
Well, I guess without meaning to offend, I guess what you guys have on me is experience, right? And so I've I've been in this industry for a year and a bit, and it feels to me like there's a lot of innovation and change taking place, and you've got people saying, oh, there's more stuff coming out than ever, and there's more development happening than ever. If you look at this in a wider picture, would you say that is accurate, or would you say that you generally have these moments of lots of new trends and then it kind of dies down? I mean, yeah, what either of you?
I think first and foremost, that's a very eloquent way of calling us old. So well done. And secondly, I think you're right and my experience of this, and I haven't been involved in the industry for a very long time, 10 years or so, and I was in the drinks industry that was actually probably the labels industry before that, so sort of pseudo print industry. But in that time, from my sort of view, an elevated view from a stage at trade shows talking to people, I think there's always been a willingness to express the views on new technology, new equipment, new opportunities. But the problem has always been that they've expressed it in the same echo chamber. It's been an internal conversation, not an external conversation. One of the reasons that we founded Print Island in the first place was to try and create effectively Spotify for print. If you want to learn about print, right, come to a place and you can choose your music. You can choose your information. That was the logic behind it. So we're effectively a content aggregator rather than a content creator. And in doing so, Johnny, I'm hoping that not only attracts members of the print industry to see what their competitors are doing, but also members of the non-print industry that can come along and see what the print industry is capable of, because they're not very good at telling the external world, which is why we still hear every year the annual "Is Print Dead?" debate. And yet those of us that know it's far from dead. In fact, it's in rude health. But they're just not very good at explaining that to the outside world. Is that a fair point, Chris?
Yeah, it is. I think, for me, I saw a lot of these innovations coming anyway, 2020, 2019, 2020. We were, especially in the space I was in, personalization and print on demand. But then I also saw huge challenges with, paper shortages, wars, COVID. But then I also saw, this is where I think the Americans and their technology boom came during COVID, where the gap was closed with, when I was working web to print at the time, and we had a phrase called second gen web to print. And what that meant was that the American market would purchase software quicker than other regions because they'd already had the first gen. They got the concept of it. They liked it, but they knew the vendor wasn't right, so they moved on to the second gen. And this happened very, very quickly because of the COVID situation. We saw labels and packaging absolutely skyrocket from that same period. So I guess what I'm trying to say also, I think there were some factors that we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years that have kind of, should we say, we've negotiated politics and economical issues to then be where we are today. So I just want to throw sort of a different spin on it there, Richard, from what I've seen from the technical point of view.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense on both standpoints, and kind of leaning in a bit on that state of the industry in the last 5 years. I was just at the Power of Print seminar, and Charles Jarrold from the BPIF was giving his kind of state of the industry address, essentially. And there were a lot of positive things to say about certain sectors coming back, and there being certain booms, and people's confidence bouncing back in big ways as well. But then he also was highlighting the fact that there's still a continued issue post-COVID with labor shortages and increasing wages and taxation in the last couple of years. And then we heard it constantly in the US, tariffs. It was like the buzzword, because Trump's tariffs have created all of these knock-on effects. So question to Richard. I mean, how much do you think those elements really do have an impact, or is it one of those kind of sink or swim things where you'll see certain people innovating within a difficult space, and further technology innovations, whatever, will come as a result?
I think there's two sides to the answer to that, Johnny. And if we take the obvious first one, which is the consumer side of it, because everywhere you look up and down the sales chain, if you like, the cost chain, somebody is having an impact on somebody above and below. And then when you have a sort of a false change put into that with tariffs, you can almost see the dominoes click, and suddenly inflation comes because people are having to pay more for things, that people are having to charge more, and so on and so forth. It's not dissimilar. I mean, the tariff impact is not that dissimilar to war, pandemic. It's a shock to the system, and because we're all used to the system for tens, if not hundreds of years of trading with each other. I know it's become more global latterly, but the principle is the same. So if I'm charged more for something, the chances are I'm going to charge you more to buy it. So you could argue that the business is best able to ride those headwinds, and we're all being battered by headwinds at the moment. The business is best able to ride it are the ones that understand that and bring forward something that the consumer is going to want, not just need. Because we will always revert to what we need. You have to have that. Food, water, oxygen. We kind of need that, and everything else is a nice to have. And so, if you flip that from the consumer perspective into the trade perspective, those that adapt. This is the old Darwin expression, isn't it? Not the strongest or the fastest, but those most willing to adapt will survive. And we're almost in a recessionary behaviour, even though technically and economically we're not in recession, but we're behaving as if we are. So everybody's hanging on to their money. Everybody's not making decisions. And until such time as somebody pulls the pin and releases that, I've said this for weeks now, Johnny, I don't believe there's a shortage of cash. I believe there's a shortage of confidence. But markets move on confidence, and businesses move on confidence. If you sit in a finance meeting over an investment strategy and you think, we might delay this 3 months and see how the world looks in 3 months' time. I think that's where we're at. We're effectively in stasis, and things like the tariffs have just made that harder because it's prolonged the amount of time before you get out of that. Does that make sense, Chris, or am I talking nonsense?
That makes a lot of sense. It's great.
I agree, Rich, with you, and I also think that those zips on the pockets of the purse strings and budgets also depends on what region you're in as well. I think having the beauty of traveling around, and it all depends what you're purchasing and where you're purchasing it and who you're purchasing it from. And I think that's an issue we have. I think the other issue, and I think what we're finding here on Print Island, is that through education, we can change that mindset, and there's still very much of, and I think, Johnny, you've got a really important role here as well, because I think with the way that you're covering the news and the way that you're challenging the status quo is actually quite refreshing. And I would urge you actually to not change too much of your mindset and be too indoctrinated with what everyone else has been doing over the last 20, 30 years, because it brings a refreshing outlook to what we need. Like Richard said, we need to be selling to the people that want to buy the technology. We're not doing that. Actually, that would not only keep our industry alive, but it would make it flourish. So I think we need to keep those mindsets. But the biggest point is I think education, because I think regionally we're all thinking very differently depending on what the economic situation is. And of course, it's that old adage, isn't it? You need to sell more, you're not getting enough cash, you stop marketing, you stop selling. You shouldn't do that. And of course, if we stop anything in the hamster wheel stops revolving, then ultimately print suffers. When marketing and sales and events and everything else is flourishing, guess what? The presses are humming. So I think there's an educational piece, Rich, I think, for me.
I think you're right. And just final thought on that as well, Johnny, before I leave you to your last and most intriguing question, which you've now got 30 seconds to think about, is traditionally and historically, economic cycles were typically about 30 years, which is broadly speaking around about the same length of time as a generation. So what tends to happen, or has tended to happen over those years, is that when the problem comes round again, because they do, a bit like fashion and music, the next generation aren't aware of it, so they treat it differently as if they've never seen it before. What we're seeing now is these economic changes are happening much more frequently, and so the same generation is having to deal with new problems. So all it makes you feel is that all the time you're facing problems. You're actually not facing any newer ones, they're just coming at you quicker. And again, this is my point about adapting, and the print industry has got a huge opportunity because it's already way ahead of itself. It just doesn't know. It doesn't have to sprint, it just has to gently run towards the future, and the customers and the consumers will come with it because their desire has changed because of the advent of generative AI and smartphones and all the stuff that we now have as part of our world. So I'm an optimist, Johnny, and I think you have to be when you're in business. I can see how that can level off. Some of those headwinds will go away naturally. Trump, how many days and hours is it until he's not there anymore? I'm sure somebody's got a ticker going somewhere. And wars come, wars go. We know that, as sad and horrific as they are. So I think as this plays out over the next 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, if I won't be here because I'm really old, as you've already pointed out, but if in 20 years' time, when you're chairman of the Print Island, which I kind of hope you are, Johnny, you'll see that actually we'll look back on this time as when we really started to make a move forward.
Yeah, no, and really great points from both of you, and it actually touches onto my last question, because print does, by all metrics, have a lot of trust behind it. People trust print. The consumer perception of print is that it is just by nature much more trustworthy, and print is now adopting a lot of these technologies, AI and generative elements, and also everything else that AI can bring. But what I'm getting from within the print world is a lot of the kind of those on the ground, a lot of the print service providers are saying that they are finding it hard to trust the new technology coming in. Some of them say, oh, all of this stuff is fantastic, and others say, oh, AI, everything seems to be slapped with AI, maybe it's just a fad, etc., etc. The kind of thing you hear with any new technology. So I guess this is probably more a question to Chris, but it could be to both of you. When these new technologies are coming out, how can those that are making it make sure that they are trusted, that they are adopted in the right way, and that people can take them on board quickly?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think ultimately you just need ROI, and I think that comes from proof of the ROI. So what I mean by that is when you're in the print space and you're trying to sell software to people that buy big manufacturing pieces of equipment like big presses, and they're going and investing lots of money, they want something tangible. It's very hard to say, the AI is going to bring. You've got to have some kind of like real stats or a case study that's really going to show the benefit. And it's really interesting working with HP on this, because they have some of the best presses in the world, and that those presses will only be the best presses if they're being run correctly and managed correctly, and that's where the software has a huge part to play. So I think the only way that gets over the line is that they sell the ROI and have the case study to show the ROI. So I think from my point of view, to answer your question, it's having a case study that's authentic and real, that the PSP will stand up to another PSP and say, I adopted X and I got Y and I'm happy.
I'm going to give you two different definitions for ROI and AI, and how that relates to the classic clunk of a change of generational technological capabilities. So with ROI, traditionally return on investment, and when I say traditionally, I mean old, by today's modern standard, should really stand for risk of inaction. And with AI, of course, you have the choice, as we all do, to use artificial intelligence or actual intelligence. And we have the luxury of both. So I think with the print industry as it is at the moment, and I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you've probably got a stat on this, Johnny, but I don't know what the average age now of a business, an owner manager of a PSP, a classic print shop business around the world is. Oh, well, Chris has got that's good. But it would be interesting to see, wouldn't it? Because, you know, when you look at this in your own family, right? Look at this around the Christmas dinner table when, you know, the young ones down that end are making TikToks about turkey, and the old ones down that end are wondering how to sharpen a carving knife. And within that spectrum of behaviour, you have the world. So we see the print industry in a sort of microcosm of that world, but they are those people. So there's no realistic reason why the ones that are trying to sharpen a carving knife have got any idea why they're making a TikTok, and vice versa. And that's the bridge that we've got to work with. So, you know, I sit here as a slightly less young person than I used to be, but I'm a pragmatist because I have to be. So I can see both ends of the table and the relevance of both of those things, but they're not mutually exclusive. So I think in order to get to the adoption of new technology, time, you know, because as younger people come in, they bring new skills in, and as older people leave for whatever reason, those older skills disappear. I don't think that's a bad thing, by the way. I think it's called evolution, and in many ways, you know, we are where we are today because of that. So for me, it's not either or. It's how much of each would be the way I would look at it.
Yeah, that's great. And Chris, it seemed like you do have a stat on that. I've got my own stat, so we can compare.
Go on, we love a stat.
It might be slightly out of date, but again, looking at how people measure ROI, I came across something along the lines of 79% of B2B business owners now are millennials. And the reason this was a pivotal stat in what I was working on at the time was that with that comes the expectation of an Amazon experience. So, for example, again, I'll refer back to software. If you were buying your kids' Christmas presents from Amazon at home in your personal life, you then expect to then go online and buy your print with the same speed and efficiency as that, or, and here's the point of the business owner, run your business off of an app or know everything that's going on in your press from your phone, because you're more, you know, you've got kids, or you're sort of in the younger space. And then to back that up came from another stat from Germany showing that a large proportion of PSPs were retiring and moving on, and then passing the business down to either the family member or somebody of that age group. So it was just along the lines, really, chaps, to sort of highlight the fact that the expectation now is not just from the consumer, but it's also from how people want to run their print shops, and the information they want at hand and the speed they want to have it at hand. And even if it's a B2B business, your B2B customers will still expect the same level of process efficiency as when purchasing, whether from Amazon or purchasing from you. So,
and on that point, so my stat, it's less exact because it's based on memory, but it was from that EPIF tool. It was at the Power of Print. They talked about, you know, the different metrics, the different age demographics of the UK print industry, and essentially what Charles Joward was saying is that the industry is only marginally older than the average. You're talking about 1 or 2 years older. However, what I have noticed is that it's about the active industry, that there are many, many PSPs out there that might have already been passed on to the next generation, or it might be someone in their 20s or 30s who's figured out how to do garment printing or how to do, you know, booklets or whatever. But they are kind of the unspoken majority. You know, we don't see them at events. They don't engage with the industry magazines, that kind of thing. Number one, that should be who we're targeting, so that we can, you know, better unify as an industry, because the more voices we get in, the more, you know, different approaches and understandings we'll have. And I think that's one of my focuses moving forward. I recently had it where I drove around our city. We're based in Bristol, and I found a whole set of people who at the time were not receiving our free industry magazine, you know, and that should just never ever be the case, you know. And so I'm working to try and get more of the industry's voices heard, and I think That's
good.
part of it for me.
Yeah, that's good. And I think with that stat, Johnny, at the end there, you just nudged the second set in your favour. So that basically makes this game of Lighthouse tennis one set all, which means we'll have to come back another day for the decider. And I've also realised there's not enough room at the top of the Lighthouse to play tennis, so we may play paddle, and just keep it fresh for the young generation.
For the young
but listen,
people.
yeah, quite exactly. Thank you to both of you. It's been really enjoyable chatting to you both today, and I think we've sort of gone around the island and taken a view of the world that we see from the top of the Lighthouse, which is the whole point. So if you like what you're seeing, do come along and have a look back on our YouTube channel and see more episodes of the Lighthouse. We have some interesting guests on, so I'm sure you'll enjoy it. But for today, my name has been Richard Askam, hosting the Lighthouse on Print Island, and thank you to my guest Chris Minn and to Jonathan John J Pert, who's joined us today.
Thanks so much. It's been really great.
Thanks, guys.